This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers, Maya, and I wanted to share it on the channel. This happened a while ago. I was driving home from a long day at work in the city. My house is in the suburbs, a decent distance outside the city, so every day after getting out at 10, I have an hour of driving. A lot of the route is through empty roads once I leave the city, so it isn't that bad, just time-consuming. That night, I was extra tired for no particular reason. I was about half an hour from home, driving along one of the quieter, single-lane highways, when through the dim streetlights I saw something blocking the road. My eyes snapped awake and I eased onto the brakes. As I got closer, the fog cleared enough for me to tell what it was. A tree laying across the entire road. I stared for a moment, confused. There had been no storms or high winds, and the tree definitely wasn't there that morning. I left the car running, put it in park, and got out to look around. There were no other fallen trees and no signs of damage nearby. I walked to both ends of the tree. It stretched from one edge of the forest to the other with no way through or around. The situation was bizarre, and only then did annoyance set in. The closest alternate route was 15 minutes back and would add at least an hour to my already long drive. I thought about calling someone, but even then it would probably take longer to get it cleared. As I stood in the road next to the tree, a light suddenly flashed on from the other side, shining through the branches and leaves. It wasn't from an approaching car. Whatever vehicle it was had to have already been sitting there, and for some reason, its lights were only now being turned on. I peered through the branches and heard a door open and close, then footsteps approaching on the other side. "Hello?" I called out, hoping to break the tension. I heard someone mumble something, not in response to me, more like to themselves. I assumed they too were frustrated about the blocked road. Then the branches shifted and leaves rustled as a man began climbing over the tree. I took a few steps back toward my car as he jumped onto my side of the road. From what I could see, he was a man with a short beard and a buzz cut, wearing a thick jacket. He looked at me and started walking closer, still not answering. I quickly got inside my car, uneasy about his behavior. He began moving faster, almost breaking into a jog. As soon as I closed the door, he came right up to the window and stared at me with a blank, empty expression. He knocked on the glass. "What do you need?" I asked nervously. He did not respond, but started mumbling to himself while looking directly at me. I kept asking what he wanted, but he only increased the knocking, hitting the window with his fist. Fear surged through me. I put the car in reverse and backed away, hearing a heavy thud on the door, likely from the door latch being struck. After that sound, I knew the situation was more dangerous than I had first thought. I spun the car around and drove off, so focused that I didn't check my mirrors to see what he was doing. Once I reached the bypass, I pulled over and called it in. By the time authorities arrived, the man and his car were gone. I don't know much more about him, only what I experienced that night. I later learned the workers who cleared the fallen tree said it had been purposefully cut down. The incident even made the news because of the likely malicious intent, but no further details were ever revealed. Whether the man I encountered was the one who cut the tree remains unknown, but the fact his car had been sitting there and the strange, aggressive way he acted makes me suspect a connection. I haven't had any other run-ins on that route, but I still find myself wide awake, even on days when I'm exhausted. Every night I drive home from work on that road, I stay extra alert and keep my doors locked. Thank you to Maya for sending this terrifying story. If you have a story, send it in and it might be featured next.
This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers, Noah, and I wanted to share it on the channel. It was late, about 3 a.m., when I was driving home from a work meeting that had run long. This was a once-a-year meeting held 8 hours away from where I usually worked, so the drive back was long and exhausting. Outside the city, the state is almost entirely farmland, miles and miles of empty fields. The roads were bare and boring, which made it easy to zone out and just focus on driving straight. Out of nowhere, I saw a huge gap in the crops to the right of the road. When I passed it, I noticed a car wedged far into the field, as if it had driven off the road and could not stop. I did not expect to see it, but it did not look like anyone was hurt. The car was off, so it seemed like whoever had been in it had already been picked up or had left. There was still phone signal out there, so they could have called for help. I drove another minute or two, and then a pair of headlights appeared in front of me. They were going so slow that I had to swerve into the other lane to pass. The speed limit on that highway was 80, and that car could not have been going more than 25, which was incredibly dangerous. As soon as I passed, the slow car sped up and closed in behind me. I thought it was just an angry driver who could not handle being passed, and I expected them to accelerate and move on. Instead, the car merged into oncoming traffic and pulled alongside me. I glanced over and saw a man looking me in the face, but he did not look angry. He had a slight smirk and otherwise no expression. He appeared to be in his mid-40s with longish hair and an unkempt beard. I looked back at the road and felt a knot of nervousness tighten in my chest. The driver sped ahead and slammed on the brakes right in front of me, forcing me to brake hard. Then he turned his car to block both lanes and stopped in the middle of the road. I managed to stop about 15 feet away, frozen in shock, trying to understand what was happening. The man climbed out of his car and sprinted straight for me. There was no attempt to hide his intentions. He held a gun in one hand and wore a hood over his head. I had no room to reverse, so I floored the accelerator and swerved off the road into the crops on the farmland. For a terrifying moment, the car kept going straight and would not turn even with the pedal pressed down. My heart sank as I thought about the other car I had seen stuck in the field. My car finally caught traction and I was able to swerve back onto the road on the opposite side of the lane. I heard a single distant gunshot as I sped away. I called 911 and gave exact details about what had happened and about the car I had seen lodged in the crops. The man who tried to stop me was never found. Police located the other car and it was empty, with no sign of the driver. It was as if whoever had been driving had suddenly swerved off the road, gotten stuck, and vanished. Their situation was eerily similar to what could have happened to me that night. If my car had stuck and I had been trapped, I might have disappeared too. Thank you to Noah for sending this terrifying story. If you have a story, send it in, and it might be featured next.
This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers, Ethan, and I wanted to share it on the channel. I drive part-time for Uber Eats while I attend college, so the job fits around my classes. This happened on a night after my lectures. It was probably around 11 p.m., and since I had no class until late the next day, I planned to stay up and grab as many orders as I could. At 1 a.m., I accepted a rare grocery order from a 7-Eleven, and the drop-off was about 15 minutes away. The route took me through several neighborhoods and eventually to the back end of an area that opened into woods. I stopped at the end of a gravel drive. The address on the app said the house was down this road, but all I could see were safety cones and construction equipment and no streetlights. I drove carefully with my brights on, picking my way through until I reached the last turn. Beyond that, it felt less like a road and more like a narrow path. I checked the map again. It still insisted the address was down this way. I looked up and gradually made out a structure ahead. From a distance, it resembled a house, but there was something off about it. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed more structures, rows of new-build houses under construction. My GPS pointed to one of the first houses on the path, so I assumed it might be finished. I turned into an empty cul-de-sac with a single house on it. Up close, the property clearly wasn't fully finished, though the front looked nearly complete with a door in place. It was weird, but my job was just to deliver. I parked, grabbed the groceries, and walked to the front door. All the lights were off, and the house was silent, which made me feel uneasy. I set the bags down and started back to my car. From the edge of my vision, something moved near the trees. I froze and stared into the darkness. Whatever I had seen had stopped moving. I hurried to my car and sat inside, started the engine, and switched on the headlights.
The beam caught a man standing right where I had seen the movement. He was watching me intently. My heartbeat spiked, and I began to back out, my attention fixed on him rather than the path. I rolled maybe 10 feet before a huge bump shook the car from behind. Then another impact rocked the front. The car lurched violently, and my adrenaline spiked. I pressed the gas and tore off the path onto the gravel road. Once I reached a more developed neighborhood, it was obvious the car was riding on rims. Several tires were flat. I pulled into a safer spot and called the police. Officers searched the address and the Uber Eats account tied to the order. The property turned out to be an unfinished lot, not inhabited, and the account was a throwaway. On the path, they found several large, sharpened metal objects that had been placed there after I pulled in, probably meant to force me to stop. What the people behind it planned once someone was stuck out there is hard to know. Maybe they wanted to rob me. Maybe it was something worse. All I know is I was lucky I didn't have to find out. Thank you to Ethan for sending this terrifying story. If you have a story, send it in, and it might be featured next.